I basically got the diagnosis. I was like, okay, well, what now? I knew nothing about autism, absolutely nothing at all. All right then, so let's get started. I've got quite a lot to talk to, but I do have ADHD as well, so if I speak too fast, just like raise your hand and ask me to repeat it, because obviously I get carried away with talking and I'm talking. So, all right. Okay, so it was nice to be asked to come here actually and talk, and I think it was Jenny I was speaking to, so that's really nice. Thank you for inviting me to the group, and I've seen you guys on Facebook a few times and all the goings on Facebook, and that's cool, and I'm part of like 50 million groups on Facebook, but you guys seem to be quite predominantly putting content out that I see on Facebook, which is quite nice. So I'll just say a little bit about who I am and like my hellos and stuff basically. So my name is Dan, or Dan Jones, and my brand is actually called TheAspieWorld, which is written on my shirt. So anybody who wants to know who I am or what I am, this is my brand, or my persona online, my online handle. And basically I'm going to be really professional and using my iPhone as my notes today because I'm just that cool. And basically I've got a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, ADHD, OCD and dyslexia, and I make weekly videos on every single social media platform you can think of about this content from my view and my growing up, and any hacks that me and my partner have come to create, or anything that we've been able to do and be successful in that way. And even if it's not successful, if I'm having a rubbish day and I feel like that's something good to share with somebody, we decide to make videos on that and discuss it accordingly. So I just like to start off this talk. I'm starting off all my talks this year. It's the first talk of the year as well, by the way, guys. As soon as I got this one booked in, I think we booked it in December, I had 9 others come in then after this one. So this was the first one of the year, and I've got a bunch more to do. And I'm actually next week I'm briefing the European Parliament in France. So that's kind of the next one after this. So it just gets crazier and crazier. So I'm going to start off all my talks with this. I kind of try to talk about what I do, and I try to change people's kind of views on things to a more positive way of thinking about stuff in a good way, not like change things for worse, change things in a good way. And so I just like to start off with this statement. Now, I get asked this a lot, people say like, oh, you're quite upbeat and positive, and I put out a lot of positive posts on social media, and I put a lot of positive content out, and even though I get a lot of haters, they say, how do you stay so positive? Is your glass half empty or is it half full? And I simply say to everybody, I say, regardless of the amount of liquid in the glass, I'm so thankful I have a glass that will just leave it there. That's where I'm thankful I have a glass, no matter how much liquid's in it. So we'll just think about that, and that's how I kind of mean to go on with everything that I do. I don't look at the amount or the amount I don't have, I do have. I look at what I do have in terms of the bigger picture, and we go from there. So that's kind of cool. So, like I said, my name is Dan. My brand name is TheAspieWorld, which was a terrible choice. I don't know why I called my brand TheAspieWorld, but it took off. I think it was just because I was so, I was a novice when I started YouTube and stuff, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I just picked any name that kind of came to my head, and it happened to be TheAspieWorld. But for whatever reason, it's stuck, and everybody knows me from that right now. So that's what my name is. And I run a YouTube channel of the same name. It's an award-winning YouTube channel. I've won quite a few awards for it, and I'm up for another one this year. Currently, I've been nominated for an Autism Professional Award. I won a WeGo Health Award, which is an American firm for Best Show in YouTube, an American healthcare company. And I also won a YouTube Next Up Award, which is kind of cool. I won another award for Best Blogs on the Internet about autism and stuff like that. And then I also have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And when that happens, they give you this quite big plaque that says, wow, the CEO sends you this big plaque that says, you did this, and it's got a little play button on it. Really cool. But that's kind of like the awards that I've won, just so you guys are clear, because some people say like, you win awards, what are they? Award-winning YouTube channel, what awards? Currently my channel's at 115,000 subscribers, which is a crazy amount of people. That's a large amount of people who just want to tune in and listen to what I have to say. And I feel like the channel is those. It's not me, it's not like this egotistical thing. It's not me, it's everybody. It's the community of people who come on every single day, and I talk to those people and I message every single one of those. If someone sends me a DM, they send me an email, if they phone me, sometimes I get my phone number and phone me, I talk to every single one of those people and respond to every single one. And when I'm on YouTube, I respond to all the comments. I get thousands. But into perspective, I probably communicate about 10,000 times in a month with people. So it's about 10,000 communications. That's emails, messages, DMs, tweets, whatever. And my girlfriend, she's like, put your phone down, goodness me. But I love it, because what happens is when you create connections with people, there's an opportunity and the ability to create change, and that change could be better for that person. So that's why I take it upon myself to be able to say, okay, I'll communicate with those people as and when they need it, and that's pretty awesome. So I'm also a best-selling author. I've got a book out in 3 languages. I've got a bestseller in the US and a bestseller in the UK. It's a book on philosophy. And I'm currently writing my 2nd book at the moment, which I'm not going to go to a publisher for, because I don't know if anyone's an author here and had a book out. Publishers just rip you off. So I'm going to do it myself and just put my own book out next time. But like I said, I'm a multimedia, social media kind of platform content creator. I create content on every single platform, and that's important. And we'll get into the importance of creating content on autism in a bit. And I just want to talk about why I do what I do. And the reason I do it, the reason I started, was because I was diagnosed officially with Asperger's syndrome. I know that people don't get diagnosed typically with Asperger's syndrome now. It's autism spectrum disorder, which again, I don't think is a very fitting name. I'd prefer autism spectrum condition maybe. But in terms of Asperger's, that was what I was diagnosed with. And I was also diagnosed with ADHD and OCD at the same time. I'd already previously had a dyslexia diagnosis. But up until that point, I was 26 years old when I got officially diagnosed with that, which is crazy, right? You're thinking, oh my goodness, how does someone become 26 years old and not get that proper diagnosis? And the reason being is because, I was back in the 90s when I lived I live in Anglesey, which is, North Wales, quite rural, some parts of it, I suppose, in Wales. And then right down the tip in Holyhead, you're thinking, where in the 90s is anyone going to be a medical professional in, early 90s? It goes, oh yeah, this is what it is. Because autism was such this, a new concept of diagnosing people in America on a professional scale. In the 90s in rural Wales, which is so difficult. And a friend of mine was one of the first people in the area to actually be diagnosed with ASD, and so that's kind of like how that came to be, and I got this diagnosis. But the reason I started and the reason I do what I do is because I basically got the diagnosis. I was like, okay, well, what now? I knew nothing about autism, absolutely nothing at all. So I was like, okay, I'll go online. Boom, 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 chuck some stuff into the computer, see what happens. Came on YouTube, because YouTube is the 2nd largest search engine in the world next to Google, and it's owned by the same company, obviously. So go on YouTube, check out some videos, and all the videos I saw were like really bleak and dark and dim lit and rubbish, and people who were just like, they were autistic individuals, but they were just so depressing. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then I was watching these people talk to me on this video, and I thought, oh my God, I felt worse. I thought, God, I need a break from this because it's so depressing. Then I thought, wow, maybe I could put some information up there that it's the same, talking about those same conditions, but actually having a bit more kind of life in it so that it wasn't so dull. Because the only thing that alarmed me was like, if I'm reading this or I'm watching this as an autistic person, viewing this, and I'm getting bored of it, then people who are learning about autism who aren't autistic are going to just absolutely switch off when they're watching this. So that was why I did what I did, and I started my first video. It was terrible, poorly lit. It was terrible. But then obviously I'm like 600 videos in now, and everything gets a lot better, and practice makes progress, and that's a key to anybody doing anything. So come a long way, and all my videos are now way better high quality, and they're way more informative, and I've got better structure to them, and that's a great thing. And so the reason I feel like this is important is because when I sit back at the end of the day and I go through my messages, just like I told you, I read all these messages, and I'm sitting there collecting all this data from these people and talking to these people, and they say, oh, thank you so much. You have no idea how much you changed my life. That is crazy. Like I never anticipated that it would be life-changing for people. I just wanted to help people along the way because I'm like this super worry, and I worry about everybody and everything, and I'm always trying to help people all the time. And some people message me and say, oh, you actually helped me get the correct diagnosis for my kid, and now understanding him or her or them in a certain fashion has changed my life, not only their life. And that's amazing. That stuff, I love it. I live for that stuff. So that's why I feel like it's important, and I feel like it's not just important that I do it. I feel like it's important that everybody who is an autistic voice can actually go online and actually talk on their platform about their own experience. And I think that's a great thing, because by doing that, we're sharing experiences and we're growing all the time, which is pretty cool. So the idea again behind what I do is positive message. I want to always just put out pretty much a positive message. Like I said, the initial videos I saw on autism back on YouTube back in the day, I mean, going back to 2013, they were just really dull. So I want to ramp that right up and have a positive message. So hey, no worries, there's a chair right there. There you go. Cool. That's a cool bag. Okay. No worries. All right. So that's why I do what I do, and that's why I feel like it's important. Just want to check in on my camera guy. Are we okay? Yeah, okay, we're good. Okay. Right then. So I did this talk, and this one is kind of like an amalgamation. I did my talks last year all about being awesomely autistic, which is kind of like the headline of this discussion, this talk, and this chapter. But then moving forward into the rest of the year, I'm actually doing an autistic positivity kind of talk, which is, so this is like an amalgamation of like the old talk and a new one for everybody here. So I just wanted to let you know what the title was, because if you might be looking at the brochure or the thing that was floating around Facebook, and it said being awesomely autistic. So what does being awesomely autistic mean? It's quite interesting. I did a whole year of talks on this. I went to LA. I did a big talk in LA. I did one in Boston, Massachusetts. I did loads in London on this. I did Summer in the City and Comic-Con, and I do appearances all around the world now, which is fantastic because it gives me this ability to communicate with people who, otherwise would never be able to have this ability to look at somebody in a professional manner in something like Comic-Con or Summer in the City or VidCon or something like that and go, wow, I relate to this person. Because one of my missions was I wanted to be able to have somewhere where somebody could be relatable everywhere, because you go to the biggest video online festival in the world, VidCon in America. I think the footfall is something like 160,000 people over the course of 3 days, and I've been there 2 years in a row. I was speaking out last year, and we're in talks about this year. And the thing that I found quite interesting was that 1 in 60 children in the US has, or 1 in 60 people in the US has an autism spectrum condition. I mean, there's far more people who are impacted by that, family members and loved ones and caretakers and everything else. And so I said to the organizers pretty simply, I said, you're putting on panels to relate to these people about mental health and all this other kind of nonsense. But I said, there's nothing about neurodiversity in there. There's nothing that people can really relate to. I want to talk about ADHD or autism, and those kids are coming in there. 1 in 60 of those are going to be on the spectrum, and you're having nothing that they can relate to. So we worked really closely with them, and we did the first one over there last year in June. This time it was July. Oh God, it was 2 days before my birthday. So we did that one in July, and then I did another one in Summer in the City in London, which is the UK-based kind of version of VidCon. And if anybody doesn't know what these conventions I'm talking about are, it's basically where any celebrity from Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, any of those social media platforms, they go there and they just entertain the crowds by doing panel talks and fan meetups, and they have all this kind of other stuff going on. It's very internet based and very techie young people awesomeness, which is pretty amazing. So what I like to talk about being awesomely autistic is like autism can be empowering, and we hear people like Greta Thunberg talking about autism superpowers. And I did my first ever 2018 talking tour, if you like. That whole year was talking about autism superpowers and what that meant, and kind of like it's this whole taking the aspect of the downsides, if there is any, of the diagnosis, and then putting them to a more positive idea and thinking forward. And the way I think about this is very, very simple. Before I get into some of the examples, is that I'm no good at cooking. I'm not a good chef. I'm actually quite a bad chef. I may be a chemist, but I'm not a chef, and I'm not a cordon bleu chef. So if somebody asked me to make some fancy dinner, I could never do it. But I don't wake up every day going, oh, I'm so annoyed that I'm not a cordon bleu chef. I never wake up. I just wake up and I go, cool, do you know what I'm good at? I'm good at making videos. I'm good at helping people. I'm good at chemistry. I'm good at music. I'm a multi-musician, so I can play music, and I feel like I'm good at those things. I'll do those things. So when people say, oh, my kid is autistic, they can't do this thing, and they dwell on what they can't do, I say to them, well, what's the point of dwelling on what you can't do? Just focus on things you can do. Nobody wakes up and dwells on things they can't do. We would never move forward, but it's the way we think about things, because how we think about it is simply this. You go into a medical establishment to get your diagnostic process or your, whatever you want to call it, to get your diagnosis. And that process is put in a negative position, because you're going to a medical establishment and people never really go, great, I'm going to a hospital today, boom. Because it's not really something that's encouragingly happy. You go to a library to find books to be inspired. You go to a hospital to fix something that's wrong. And that's kind of like the idea that people have in it. So when you're going to a place to get a diagnosis of something, it's always have this unconditional stigma in your head that it's a wrong thing, a negative thing. So instantly you go, oh, I'm just going to focus on the negative, which is a bad thing. But I'm trying to move away from that, and this is kind of like the whole idea of this. So some ideas on what I mean by being awesomely autistic is like hyper focus, and I'll give you an example. So people on the spectrum like hyper focus, and they can focus in on things really, really well. And one of the things that I didn't realize I was good at was balancing chemistry equations. Now I won't bore anybody with the jargon of chemistry. It's amazing and I love it. And quantum chemistry is the best thing ever. But in terms of when I was doing my degree, something I found quite funny, if you like, I would love balancing equations, basically meaning that everything on this side of the equation had to balance balance out to everything on this side of the equation. So how many hydrogens and oxygens you have here has to be the same there, regardless of the reaction that happens in between. That's just the law of how things work. It's got thermodynamics. Everything has to balance out. And so they take it to this huge thing. I don't know if anyone's done chemistry here, and they have this big table and they go, okay, how many oxygens on this side, how many on this side, and they have to balance out, calculate them all up, and then you balance them out at the bottom. It takes people ages. It's ridiculous. But I loved it so much that I used to do these for fun, and so I could just do them by looking at it. I didn't have to do this whole table, and I feel like it's down to hyper-focusing on one specific niche of something that is a special interest and knowing a lot about that. And so an example of this is when we had Professor Balapes, which is a very famous scientist. He was teaching us this stuff about this, quantum chemistry, and he had this equation on the board in front of an auditorium full of people. I stopped him and I said, your equation's unbalanced, and he couldn't believe it. But he missed a hydrogen, and stuff like that. It was really funny because looking at hyperfocus, why is hyperfocus a good thing? Parents always complain, oh, my kid's just spending all this time playing Minecraft or PUBG or whatever, and they're focusing on that too heavily. I say, great, let them do it. It's awesome, because you never know when that's going to come in handy. We'll talk more about why that would be really, really good in a minute. But that's one example of hyperfocus, using things in a positive way or an empowering way to get ahead in life, or to make sure you are you're comfortable in what you're doing, or understand that that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Another example of you is attention to detail. So people on the spectrum, everybody has attention to detail, but people on the spectrum love attention to detail typically, right? There may be some people who don't really care about attention to detail, but most of my friends who are on the spectrum love attention to detail, and I feel like it's one of those things that we can all kind of connect on, and we love those things. Like I'm really good at spot the difference and all those kind of things, and I love it. Small detail, I don't know why, it's amazing. An example of this is people on the spectrum can use this to their ability to doing something very, very, very good. Sorry, do you want to pause till this lady comes in and sits down? There you go. Hey, it's okay. So, how could attention to detail be used in a good practical way? Well, another way of being emotionally autistic is a really good friend of mine, a girl called Charles Davis. She is an MTV host. She hosts a show on MTV called Just the Two of Us in the UK. There's an American version of it, but she's a host in the UK. And she is on the spectrum. She has the same diagnosis as me. She's, Asperger's syndrome diagnosis, but it's ASD. But she's a famous tattoo artist, and she does very, very well from it. She's got her own MTV show, and she has her own store in her hometown, a tattoo studio, and that's completely booked up all the time, and you can never just walk in. You have to make like 6 month ahead appointment, and that's amazing because she is using her attention to detail in a way that propels her forward and makes her empowered in herself and who she is, and that's just an amazing thing. And because she believed in that and channeled that and went forward with it, that was able to change her life. So rather than sitting at home and worrying about things that she couldn't do, like, oh, I'm no good at socializing with these people, and I go to parties and I freak out, or I go to a Christmas, family gathering and I have to go out to the toilet and cry a little bit because there's so many things going on. That happens to me. Rather than her doing that, she's not worrying about those things. Yes, those things happen, but she's not focusing on those things. She's focusing on, hey, I'm really good at attention to detail. I can make some really good art. She actually makes some fantastic art, and the tattoos are amazing. She wouldn't be on MTV if it was rubbish, put it that way. And then there's the other kind of like empowering example I'm going to show you or speak to you about, should I say. It was a friend of mine who, her brother is on the spectrum, and I don't know him personally, but I know of him because I used to work with this young lady, and she was saying that her brother is quite an interesting guy. He's on the spectrum, and he has quite high support needs, and he got in a rage and broke the handle off his door in his bedroom. God, smashed it, broke it. I've done it all the time. I've broken this hand twice, broken this hand once, on this wrist once as well. And so I know, I can sympathize and I understand what is going on there and how he gets this rage and anger. But the funny thing is, we didn't really concentrate on that. What I found inspiring about this conversation I had with this young lady was that she said he loves Lego, as do most people who I speak to on the spectrum. They love a bit of Lego and Minecraft. You don't have to, it doesn't make any difference, but a lot of people do, and that's a good thing. And so he took his Lego kit and he made a door handle out of Lego and put it onto the door and fixed it to it, and now it works better than the handle that was on it originally. So when this situation arose where he was in a negative situation where he broke this door handle, he had two choices. You could focus on this negative of like, oh my goodness, I have anger issues because of my autism spectrum condition, or you can say, oh well, actually I have the ability to create a new handle from Lego, and it makes, how cool is that? I thought it was really, really, really cool. So that's what I mean about being like awesomely autistic and changing that kind of like glass half empty, glass half full. Well, I've got a glass, let's talk about that. And I just find that quite interesting. Now I'll give you some examples from my kind of like, what have I done? How do I empower those things? And because this is what this talk is designed to do, is to get you think about things just in a little bit of a different way. I know that a lot of the information I'm telling you is not like brand new, and people aren't going to be like, whoa, but you're definitely going to just think about certain examples in lifestyles. So, for years and years and years, I've struggled, been up and down. My personality goes up and down, up and down, up and down. It's crazy. I suffer with mental health issues as well, which comes lovely comorbid with an autism spectrum condition, depression, stress, anxiety, all those other things that come with it. Actually, I've just had a heck of a terrible bulk of depression, which was incredibly intense. But because of that, and again, it's focusing on those things. When you're in those waves of like downward spirals, you're like, oh my goodness, again, I'm feeling really low, and I'm feeling low, and you focus on it. But I was always felt like I was no good because growing up, I was terrible at writing. My handwriting's terrible. It's like a spider crawled in ink and then crawled across the page. It's terrible. I never do it. And I love emails and text messages because everything's perfect. You can just choose the font and it's amazing. But when I was writing, it was terrible. I've got really bad fine motor skills as well. I don't know if anybody else has those issues. Yeah? Okay. So I like putting keys in doors. I'm like, oh my God, how do I do this? It's crazy. And I put the key in my mouth and it's terrible. And we're trying all sorts to get my fine motor skills better, but they're terrible. And I drop things all the time. And another thing is spatial awareness. I've got no idea. I walk into door frames because I'm like, oh goodness, I have no idea how spatially aware I am. But there's an answer actually. Just a really quick going straight off the script here. I'm not. This is not on here, but it's just a tip for you guys. I tried this thing called a sensory diet. Has anyone heard of it? Raise hands. Sensory diet? No. So those proprioception and fine motor skills can be improved with sensory diet because these are all down to the deep muscle proprioception, which is like how your muscles get activated in the morning and how it keeps getting activated all day. And so I worked with an occupational therapist, and we designed this kind of like idea of a sensory diet where when you do something to engage deep muscle activity, that lasts about 2 hours. So where I was waking up and walking into door frames and not being able to understand how far I needed to open the door and like not being able to put a cup in the cupboard because I'm hitting the bottom of the cupboard, if I'd exercised for, I don't know, half an hour or had a 10 to 15 minute shower in the morning, those things that activate your muscle kind of usage actually then helps you a bit more aware and helps your muscles be a bit more aware, and that spatial awareness can actually increase. Fantastic. I'd never seen this before. Working with this occupational therapist was amazing. So just a takeaway tip here is that, yeah, try sensory diet or just Google sensory diet. And it's doing something that, and so now basically, typically, just so you know, I go, yeah, shower in the morning, then 2 hours after that, I'll do some maybe like press ups or wall press ups or something. And then a couple of hours after that, maybe I'll go for a run or a walk because it's anything that engages the muscles and gets that deep kind of proprioception feeling going. So definitely check that out and think about it. Just a good tip because I was struggling for ages. I have bruises all over my arms. It's terrible. But after doing that, it does get better. It doesn't cure it because, what a terrible word. But we can definitely, make things better. Okay, so handwriting, that's where we were. And so I was always terrible. And I always thought to myself, like, goodness me, I'd love to one day have a book out, but being someone who could barely read a book, it takes me ages to read a book. I don't know if you do the same thing. You read a line of a book, and my ADHD and dyslexia just actually kicked my butt because I'm like reading this line, and then I have to go back and read the line, and I have to go back and read the line, and I have to go back and read the line. And I'm sitting there reading the same line for half an hour, and I still haven't digested the information. I'm like, goodness me, what is going on? And it's so funny. And I always had this idea, like, it'd be cool to write a book, any book, about just be cool, wouldn't it? Like, who wouldn't want to write a book? And anyway, so super dyslexic, like this, it was just ridiculous. But if we fast forward now, 2017, I was in a position where I was able to actually write a book and have the book published on a publisher, and then actually have that book out in 3 languages. How does that happen? How do you take someone who's so ridiculous at reading and writing to become a best-selling author? How does that happen? Well, it's finding a problems solution kind of scenario. Like, how do you navigate through problems? And this is it. I said, okay, look, I have lots of information and I have a lot of things to say, as you guys can tell. And how do I relate that to a book? Well, I'm no good at writing, but I'm good at talking. So I found somebody who I could talk at, and then they could write that down in perfect English because that's what I needed. That's what was missing. It was the communicative kind of like, okay, that was just a small piece. Everything else is just as normal. Publisher talks to you, gets the book, gets a proposal, pushes it out. People like it, people buy it, people change it to different languages. Easy peasy, which is a small piece. So I was like, I'm always fascinated by problems, and I think that everything could be solved there are always solutions to problems. Always solutions to problems. No matter how you think about something, there's always a solution to a problem. And this is why I love mathematics as well, because it's just funny, isn't it? Someone's throwing you a ridiculous problem. You're like, I'll solve that. We'll figure it out. We don't have to stay here all night. I love it. And I used to despise mathematics because I didn't understand what they were asking. And then I realized when I did my degree that it was just, everything's just mathematics. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. And then I love maths. It's crazy. I would do a degree in maths now if I had time, but traveling around the world and stuff, you don't get any chance to do anything. You don't get to sleep, let alone do a degree. So turning from being a worried dyslexic person to being a best-selling author is easy. One, you believe in yourself, and two, know that you're able to problem solve, and you can come over those hurdles very, very easily. You just have to think about it in a different way. Don't think, like I said, a glass half empty or a glass half full. Well, if I have a glass, let's just start there. Like, there's more to a situation than what society presents itself, and I think that's quite funny. So let's move on to another example where I did this. So I left school with only 2 GCSEs, and those 2 GCSEs were in IT because I loved computers. I was fascinated by computers growing up. I loved VR and robotics and computing and building computers, loved it. But I was quite a poor person, so I didn't have access to these things. So when I was in school, I just used to spend all my time on these computers, and I just loved gadgets and gizmos and all this stuff. Anything I could, any extra time I could do with computers, I did. And so I got my 2 GCSEs in computing, and that was it. When you leave school with pretty much nothing else. English, I mean, goodness me, and they took me off learning Welsh, because in Wales you have to learn Welsh as part of your GCSEs, but took me off doing Welsh because I could barely speak English, because I had such difficulty in learning the language properly and appropriately and speaking with such great vocabulary as I do today. And that was so, it was so horrible even school, thinking, what am I going to do? How am I ever going to do something? And I loved science and computers when I was a kid. I'd love to. I wanted to be a rocket scientist when I was a kid. I always wanted to work for NASA or do something rocket sciencey. And it's funny because we fast forward then to 2015. I was able to do a degree in chemistry, and then I graduated in 2017 with a degree in chemistry, and part of that was rocket science, which I love. And so the funny thing was, how did that happen? How did I even do that? Because I thought about it logically. I thought, okay, well, why am I wallowing in the fact that I go, I've got no GCSEs and all this rubbish? Oh, well, forget that. We're never going to change that, and nobody can go back in time. So let's just stop worrying about that. The definition of time is the past, so forget that. Let's look forward and think how I can solve this problem. So I was like, okay, what do I need to do? Well, I need to get a certain amount of credits, right, to get accepted to do a degree. So how do I do that? Well, I found an access course for people who had no qualifications. I thought, great, you did it.
I'm doing access.
Oh, you do an access course? It's fantastic, isn't it?
I taught an access
Oh,
course at the local college.
There you go. See, access.
Access to higher education.
Yes, access to higher education, and I'd never heard of this. It was just great.
And I taught science as well.
Oh, you did? Great.
That's
No, it's okay. I love it. And so I did this. I found this access to higher education course, and I sat down and did it. And they kind of looked at me as if to say, you're never going to do this. You've got nothing. You've got no qualifications. You're not even an A-level student. You've got nothing. And I said, well, okay, we'll just try it. So you have to do a pre-access access course. You have to spend one day. I don't know if you did this with your one, but you spend one day and one day basically going through a question and doing a small test to see if you were viable to go on to do the access course, because it's a kind of way of cutting the lazy people, I guess, who don't really want to do it. It's just there because the social security said you have to do something, and the people who actually want to be there, I guess that was their idea of it. It's quite crude, but they did it. And so I did the test, put it in, and then you wait. You get this 8-hour day of just filling in this test, and you wait at the end of the day to feel if you're going to come back tomorrow, or you didn't make a cut. And then I got the highest score in maths. I didn't even maths GCSE. I didn't do any maths at all. And I got the highest score in maths. They were like, yeah, you can come on and do the course. And I was like, whoa. So I did it, and I stuck it out, and I did 35 weeks or whatever it is of this access to higher education course. And then I went for an interview, and the principal of the school, or what do you want to call it, the professor, Mike Beckett from Bangor, he said, great, thanks for coming down to the interview and putting your application form in, through UCAS and all this rubbish for the degree. Why do you think you're good enough to get on this course? I said, well, look, I'm a self-taught musician that plays about 8 different instruments. That means I can I can record my own albums independently, and I can do all kinds of things. I love music, and music is like problem solving and building walls with vibrations and timing. And timing is interesting because music is like mathematics, and basically all chemistry is mathematics. So then he was like, all right, well, you're on the course. So he gave me acceptance to go on the course, and I did it. I did the course, did the degree, and now I'm a qualified chemist. So that was a way of me looking at a situation that was completely unobtainable, but then thinking, well, of course, when you look at it like that, when you look at where I am and where I need to be, it's just ridiculous. Of course, there's steps for every single thing, like Rome wasn't built in a day, and if we don't take that first step forward, we'll never be able to do those things. But it's believing in yourself and believing that the fact that if you think about the things that make you upset, I don't sit at night and worry about the fact that I have anxiety or I can't, socialize properly with people or I don't look people in the eye. I never worry about those things. It's not worth worrying about. What I worry about is like, I'm really good at making videos. How can I improve them? And I'm not like a worry, but it's a thought. I spend my effort and energy on that because we're only alive for a 20, you got your 80 to 100 years and you're thinking, how am I going to spend those? And it should be spent not worrying about things you can't do, but focusing on the things you can do, which I think is amazing. So, the last thing I'll talk about of how I, an example of how I met this challenge again head on and went problems and then got a solution was, again, I just spoke about being a multi-musician, right? I played loads of instruments and I self-taught and I loved music. Music is an amazing way to communicate with yourself because it's a way of just, thinking to yourself and thinking timing and you have this repetitive kind of thing. I don't know if anybody else does this, but when I'm quite stressed, anxious, I count quite a lot and so I just count numbers and stuff.
I do that with poetry.
Oh, you do it, yeah? It's good. It's quite
a rhythm and the harmonics.
Right, you got it. That's it, and you feel it. It's not like something you think. It's you connect with it, right? Of course, you're like making a painting, right? Yeah. Music is exactly the same, and that kind of like that vibration and that whole relationship with counting was amazing. And so I love music, and I've been a musician for years and years and years. And so I decided that I wanted to music. So yeah, being a musician, and then I had this crazy idea. Like I'd recorded albums and stuff, and I was in a band, and my type of music I was into was kind of like pop rock kind of skater music, being a kid, growing up in the mid 2000s, early 90s, it was all kind of like alternative skateboarding music, and I loved it. I loved all that stuff. It was amazing. So I was like, okay, I want to put a CD out, but I want to get it out in Japan. Like, why do you want a CD out in Japan? Japan actually has a large music market. I think Japan is China now has it, but Japan's the second largest music market in the world, which is amazing. They consume more music than anywhere else other than China, but only because of the amount of people in China, not because of the type of music that they release in China. So in terms of Japan and the Japanese market for music, I was so taken by this whole culture of like pop punk and stuff that really took off in Japan. I was like, I want my CD out in Japan. How do I do this? I mean, a guy from Wales with like no qualifications, not even signed to a record label. How do I get a CD out in Japan? If we fast forward to 2016, we had a record out in Japan. It got to number 6 or 5. Actually, got to number 5 in the HMV charts and number 6 in the Tower Records charts. We beat like Sum 41, I think, to number 5 spot in one of those charts, which is amazing. I never even thought that was ever going to happen. And I thought, how did you do it? How did I do that? Again, it was a problem that I figured, okay, there's a problem here. How get this problem presented to me and how do I fix this issue? Because it was an issue. If you treat everything as an issue, how do I fix it? And the simple fix was this. I didn't know Japanese. I didn't know any Japanese record labels. So I made friends with somebody who was Japanese, who was in the music industry. And I asked them, hey, any labels I can go to? And they said, yeah, check out this label, this label, this label. And I checked them out and I sent them messages. And there was an English-speaking Japanese label, as most of them are. And then they came over and said, hey, send me a CD. I would love it. I'll check it out. And then they said, okay, we'll take it on and we'll put it out and we'll push it. And it was amazing. It was fantastic. It was one of the most interesting experiences of my life, actually, having to sign a contract in Japanese, because everybody has a stamp rather than a signature in Japan. They don't sign things with a signature, sign with a stamp, like a personalized stamp. And that was quite interesting. So I had this like stamp and then a signature. It was fantastic. But that was a way I found an issue, then it was a problem, and then I was like, okay, how am I going to overcome this? And then I realized that through the way my brain works is that I like to data analyze everything. I think everything is data, and if you can analyze the data, you'll find the issue and the solution to the issue within that data, because that's all it is. It's kind of like you take a survey of people, and then you can find out who did what and who said this, and then you'll find out your problem. So like a what's making people sick survey, like you do in school. And so that was how I treated those problems. Very interesting. And I love that. I love data. I love data. I love it. I just sit down and analyze data all day. But because of that, the way my brain works, I decided to focus on that and become, good at what I did. And then I got to see it out in Japan. And that was another way that I was becoming awesomely autistic, by using the traits that would completely be useless for anything else, but putting into practice there, which is pretty awesome. So when I just want to talk about like how people see the term autism, because this is a big thing, and there's various amounts. Now let's do a quick disclosure. There's various amounts of people who are autism advocates from all backgrounds and all genders and everything in the world. It's fantastic, and I love it. And everybody should be doing their own thing, and that's great. And I don't discriminate about anybody. I don't say that any terminology or use of terminology is bad or good or anything. I just say, look, we're all people trying to do our best, and that's it. So there are different terminology, like Asperger's isn't used. People don't like people using the term Aspie. People use like high functioning autism as a term that people kind of don't like people using. Low functioning, they don't like that term. There's all kinds of there's autism speak, so people don't like to use that dirty word. Nobody talks about that. National Autistic Society, some people love them, some people hate them. Whatever happens, Again, let's not focus on the things they can't do. Let's only focus on things that they do and they do good. So there's good in everybody, and I'll always just go for that. And I'm always just open to everything. I don't discriminate about anybody. But typically, the general public, when they hear the word autism, they feel like they are hearing about somebody who is vulnerable. That's what they hear. They hear autism, they think, oh, yeah. It's funny, like when they say, oh, my sister, my brother's autistic. So her friend's like, oh, that's a shame. Well, why is it a shame? Why is that a shame that I have an autism spectrum condition? Because people have been conditioned to think of it in a negative way, that it's something that impacts our lives negatively. Everything impacts everybody's life negatively. Some people are born without certain limbs. Some people are born without the ability to think about riding bikes or swimming or overcoming the fear of flying. They'll never fly in their lives, but they don't dwell on it. It's not a negative thing. We don't say, oh, goodness me. We just like, oh, well, that's who they are and that's how they are. And it's something that is them, and it's not a bad thing. It's just who they are. And it's funny because that vulnerable image of people on the spectrum puts the person in the spectrum in that position. So imagine you're a kid and you're with your mum. And your mum goes somewhere, like, oh yeah, this is my kid Dan, he's on the spectrum. And they go, oh goodness me, and they speak really down to you, like you're some, person who's never going to understand anything they're saying. And then you feel like that person. They make you feel like that person. So you already, so the way society looks at you makes you feel that way. And then you get into that rut of just feeling like this vulnerable victim of something, when it's completely not that. It's not that at all. Like I just showed you 3 examples of how I could boost something amazing from just taking the things that how I live my life and how my brain works and moving that forward. So I find that amazing. So this is the difference. When people hear the word autism, they think about a kid who can't speak, a non-verbal kid, right? Or not can't speak, but a non-verbal kid. Or they think about Rain Man, terrible example. And then they'll think about somebody in a room rocking, unable of talking, unable of communicating. What they never do is they never think, when they hear the term autism, they don't think Greta Thunberg, Nikola Tesla, Susan Boyle, Dan Aykroyd. They never think of those people. Why? Because nobody's ever explained it to them in that way, that those people are also on the spectrum. They only see this negative thing, like it's always a terrible thing. Like doctors never speak about it in a positive way. Congratulations, kids on the spectrum, awesome. They never say that. They say, oh, kids on the spectrum, we are going to look for help and support. And they put it in a really depressing manner. It's crazy, and I'm trying to break that stigma. That's what I'm trying to do. I do talks for government. Like I told you, I'm going to France in a week or two to talk to the government about how they can improve those kind of communications between professionals and the general public in terms of autism, because that's so important. Because again, it puts you in that kind of, it doesn't make you look up to heroes and people who are really famous and doing amazing things. It makes you just think about, oh yeah, never going to amount to anything, and this whole depressive idea of autism, which is terrible. So this is the idea of these talks that I do. When I talk to large groups in London and stuff, and I tell them these things. I went to Birmingham and did the autism show in Birmingham. I did a similar talk to this. And people were just like, whoa, the perspective was just changed completely, because they were like, oh yeah, you think of autism, you think about it, and you're thinking about the times when they worry about it. They don't think about how awesome it's going to be. And on the contrary to that, or on the flip side, is when people watch my videos, I get quite a lot of comments and parents saying, God, my kid is like you so much so, but they're not as confident as you yet. And I say, well, it's okay, practice makes progress. When I first ever did a YouTube video, it was terrible. Because people say practice makes perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. Let's just be honest here. Perfect is a terrible thing, because you reach a state of perfection, what happens then? Well, you'll only decline, won't it? So that's just you're never going to reach a state of perfection. What's everyone talking about? Practice makes progress. Everything is a process that's ongoing, evolving all the time. And that's an amazing thing. That's all the beauty of life. It's always evolving. It's always another day to do something. Don't worry about it. And so when people think about the way that they contact me and say, oh, my kid, they're just like you, but they don't do this. I say, give them time, encourage them. Don't look at it in a negative way. If you think about the things, they say, oh, my kid is really good at Minecraft. They love Minecraft. He spends hours a day in Minecraft. I'm going to try and pull him off. Don't want them on Minecraft. So do it, because it builds a lot of different things. They're learning social skills. They're learning the panic of problem solving instantly. Simultaneously looking at how do I organize this rack of stuff that I've got to build? How do I organize the fact that my house is now being attacked? How do I organize invasions? All of those things are going to make that person grow in terms of personal development, which is amazing. So there's always a light bulb moment for parents, basically, when I talk to them. And I think, and just as a side note, going off script here again, when I did my degree degree in chemistry. You guys will love this. I don't know if you guys do play Minecraft, but if you've anything to do with autism, you must have heard of Minecraft. So for my dissertation, what normally happens, and anyone who's done a science degree, is you work alongside a PhD and you basically like their slave, and you do a bit of like research for them, and then you put it in at the end of the day and you get your degree, but then it goes towards their PhD, and it's kind of a bit like, ugh. So what I did for mine is something completely out of the water. I said to them, okay, I'm going to build a teaching tool in Minecraft to show kids how to learn molecular symmetry and group theory, which is amazing. I love that. Molecular symmetry and group theory in Minecraft. So everyone can just sit there, look at the information, and in seconds they'll get it rather than having to sit through lectures and lectures and lectures. And so I did it all on my own. I just built this thing on my own. I had no PhD kind of guidance. I was on my own. And it was funny because when I did my verbal assessment, every answer I gave was 100% correct because I knew more about the project than they did because I invented it. So I just loved that. Minecraft is an amazing thing, and I did my degree in it. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? But parents always complain about the kids playing Minecraft. I think it's a great thing. Okay, so another reason that people look at negatives in autism is because the media put a crazy slant on it, don't they? The media never say, autistic female, Susan Boyle, got a #1 album, #1 single, great, fantastic, look at that. They never do. They just say Susan Boyle did this. But if a guy with ADHD or Asperger's syndrome shoots up a school in America, autistic kid kills blah, blah, blah. So why is it that they use those in a negative way than in a positive way, and why do they miss it out when they're in a positive way? The answer, I don't know. The media control what we want to be told and hear for a reason to create a hypernormalized state of what we realize as reality, but that's not the reality, and anybody who is switched on enough can realize that that's just garbage. And I think it's because they want to mix what they think is mental health with sensationalism, and when you mix those two together you get high sales, unfortunately, because we live in capitalist-based societies and everyone wants sales. So it's that's helped depress the view of autistic people, which is crazy, right? Nobody ever says like, oh yeah, Dan Aykroyd, fantastic autistic actor and created amazing films. They never say that. They just say Dan Aykroyd, yeah, cool. And then when anyone mentions autism, it's always this like small and important thing. But if he used to shoot up a school, it'd be the first thing in the headlines would say. It was funny. So it's that whole idea of like, as well as the media and stuff like that, it's people dwelling on the negative, and we all do it because everybody is kind of like by default like an optimist, a pessimist, because they always worry about things. We worry about money every single day. We worry about what our next adventure is going to be, and how we're going to sort these things, and all the problems that life's going to throw at you, and is our health going to sustain, and and all these things. There's all these things pointing at us. So we're always by default pessimists. But optimism comes from the ability to accept oneself for who we are, and I love that, because when I was diagnosed with an autism spectrum condition, it's weird saying the word diagnosed, isn't it? When I was diagnosed ASD, it was almost like a self-exploration. I was able to look into myself and figure out who I was, and that was profound because I was like, oh, this is who I am. I had no more worry about, oh, why am I doing these things? I don't understand these things, and there's answers for those things, because when I started looking at the right way, I was like, oh, okay, of course, it's communication. Everything's down to communication. It's black and white thinking and all the other bits and fun things that come with it. So it was all of those things that led me to self-exploration, and self-knowing then leads to self-love, and self-love is an amazing thing because that gives you confidence. Confidence is king. Anything else is just an added bonus. But you need to become confident, and anybody who is feeling kind of like quite unconfident about anything, because people get uncomfortable about all kinds of stuff. And I had this argument with people how they say like selfies are such this horrible kind of like thing where people are like just so vain, and they want to take selfies all the time. And it's funny because I feel like selfies are a great way to build confidence, because if you're confident enough to put a picture of yourself on the internet to be judged by millions of people, it shows how confident you actually are. And it's funny because I heard people say the same thing about makeup, saying how makeup was such a destructive thing because it makes people look a certain way and it makes them look, you're fake and plastic. I said, okay, but check out this story. A dear friend of mine who I interviewed for my book was actually, what she did in her spare time is she went to cancer wards and went to the women there and the men who wanted makeup and to feel great and to feel positive, and put that makeup on and made them feel amazing for the short amount of time that they could through makeup. And so there's always different ways of looking at things, and things may not always be how they seem, but confidence comes from a self-knowing point of view, and just to know that, again, I'm just saying these small stories to make you think about things in a different way, kind of like glass half empty, glass half full, and I just have a glass and that's fine. But selfies are maybe a good thing. And another thing is, just to circle back on selfies before I get into the rest of the stuff, is if you ever think that somebody is oh, they're putting a selfie because they're very, very vain. Well, maybe on the contrary, that person may have been the only selfie they've ever put up, and they felt so good that they felt like, yes, this is me, body confident. Once in my life, I'm going to put this picture up. Maybe why they've done that. So I always think about selfies in a different way. I always just think the same. I thought, oh man, these vain people putting a picture up of their muscles, they're putting their makeup on and, pouting and stuff. And I thought, okay, but there may be a good reason for that. So anyway, there's always ways to look at different things. I love this. Sorry, I'm just outside of the box thinking all the time. I love it. Okay, so what does being awesomely autistic really look like? Well, it's basically like this. A kid who is really good at playing Fortnite, right, has the ability to become the best Fortnite player in the world. And there's nothing wrong with that, because a friend of mine is a guy called Sean, and he runs a channel on YouTube. He's a YouTuber, and he's called PewDiePie. No, sorry, he's not called PewDiePie. He's called Jacksepticeye. He's friends with PewDiePie. He's called Jacksepticeye on YouTube. That's his online name. He makes millions and millions and millions of pounds every single year from playing games on the internet. And there's nothing wrong with that. So when parents worry about the ability or lack thereof, the ability or lack thereof, what they see in their mind of their kids playing computer games or being bogged down with certain things, it's actually nothing to do with the negative part. You can actually move that into a career, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing to remember as well. I always say to parents, I say, okay, encourage the things that they're good at and focus in on those things, because nobody ever did that for me when I was a kid, and I wish they did. Maybe I would have been a lot further along when I did that. But it's that, and then I think, well, what future my kid's going to have? Well, he's obsessed with Lego. I said, okay, well, maybe he could get a job in Legoland building structures. Nothing wrong with that. What about Minecraft? Well, maybe you could work with a gaming company, a computer engineering company, and create games. There's so many levels to the ability to just think about why, if you're good at something, always encourage it. Don't just pacify it off saying, oh, they're just on the computer all the time. And I'm really good at posting videos on the internet, right? And obviously I wouldn't have 100,000 subscribers if I didn't. But because I'm good at doing that, I mean, it doesn't make me it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing, because I'm educating people. I'm learning things. I'm learning things all the time. I'm learning a lot of metadata in social media SEO development, which is search engine optimization. And those things are crazy. And people pay thousands of pounds for me to talk to them about search engine optimization, how to rank their videos. And that's an interesting thing. That it was a byproduct of just the fact that I was focusing on the ability to put out video, and I love that. I love the ability to put out. So, it's funny. A lot of people always they come to me sometimes with this despair. Oh my god, my kid is just, what are they going to do? They're just into Lego, or they're just into the environment, but they don't they don't have any friends to talk to, and they don't look me in the eye. I say, well, that's absolutely fine, because maybe one day they're going to be the biggest environmental activist in the world. Well, I said that before, and now we have Greta Thunberg, doing her bit for the world, and that's amazing. And I predicted this was happening 2 years ago, but it's funny. I love doing that because it changes the parents' perspective, and the parents are kind of some of the worst, they're the biggest critics of these kids. And it's quite funny because because the parents are fed this garbage constantly by doctors, by TV, by media, by people who don't know that the kid, that's it. Your kid is never going to do this, never going to do that, and that's a bad thing. And it's like, oh my goodness, if I could just grab all the mums and just put them in the corner, come on. And so, they're the kids' biggest critics. So my kind of job, my biggest passion, my biggest work is that I try and change the perceptions of people's versions of what they think is reality, to then go, oh shoot, yeah, this guy is actually talking some sense, and then change them from critics to being the cheerleaders that the kids really, really need. So, if we don't encourage those things, we'll never know. If nobody encouraged Greta Thunberg to do what she's doing, and everyone gives her dad stick, but I think he's great because he's encouraged her to do what she felt passionate about, and look what she's doing now, changing the world. It's incredible. So, looking at the future, what does my work entail, and what am I doing in the future? And it's basically, I am trying to obviously spread this positive message, changing the perceptions and changing things. But the next level for me is on a governmental level, or on a societal level, where we can start changing things. Because one of the things that really ticks me off is that when you see shops have disability access, right? They say, yeah, we've got disability access. There's a ramp there, there's a holding on kind of bar, and the toilets are great for wheelchair users, which is great, it's fantastic. But I say, it's not right for your disability, And they say, oh, well, we've got disability access. Okay, so what neurodivergent disabilities? And they say, well, I don't know what that is. And it really annoys me because I go to Tesco and I can't stand the music, and the lighting in there is terrible, and there's too many people, and it's noisy, and the beeps on the checkouts are insane. So I say to them, this is not autism friendly, this is not disability friendly on a whole. So what I'm trying to do is get into those circles and those governmental departments and start to change the way people see it. Because if you go back to the 1920s, if you're a wheelchair user and you want to go to Tesco, you're knackered. You know, if there's stairs there, no, it's not going to happen. It's your own fault. You're in a wheelchair. Oh my goodness! Imagine saying that to somebody now. You'd be thrown in jail, well, rightfully so. And so it gradually changed because people campaigned and pioneered these ideas of changing the way people thought about people with disabilities, and we got social justice for those people, which is great. But we're in the position now with neurodiversity that people were in wheelchairs back in like the 20s and like the 30s, and so what I'm trying to do is change that. It's going to be a long process. It's going to be a lengthy process, but I have 100,000 people behind me at least, and we're going to move forward and do all those things and campaign. I'm pushing forward with those things. So I just. The sunflower lanyards. I'm actually working with them. An interesting thing, actually, the sunflower lanyards, you should mention that, is the hidden disability lanyards that everyone can get. I think you can get from like Argos and Tesco. Tesco did a pilot scheme. I'm not sure if they see my man over here's got one right here. Yeah. So I work with them. Oh, yay! That's awesome. I love it. You got it. Oh, okay, excellent. They're fantastic. And actually, I'm working with them directly. They reached out to me, and so I'm working with them directly. I did a video about it a couple of weeks ago, actually, and I mentioned it. But what we're actually working on is putting it into the United States, because I feel like the UK are picking up steam with it, and a lot of the airports are. The problem you've got, though, when I went to San Francisco, one of my many obsessions, and I was obsessed with San Francisco. I love it because it's split up into districts, and every district has a different history. I freaking love it. So I went to San Francisco. And I went from Ireland, so I flew from Ireland to Canada to San Francisco. But in order to get flying from Ireland was great. They had this whole like autism friendly thing set up, and they were like, great. You had this lanyard around. They helped me out, and they put me through a different like check-in thing, and it was great. I felt so comfortable. As soon as I came into Canadian style, bang, it was just like, okay, every man for themselves. Off you go, no help. How do you connect those dots? So that's what I'm working on at the moment. The lanyard system here is working great because we have the ability to understand that as a society. We accept it and we go, okay, yes, because of the work that National Autistic Society have done and the other kind of campaigners and the active campaigners, like Anna Kennedy, maybe. I don't know, a lot of people like her, but she does do some great work and helps open people's eyes to certain things. And yes, the lanyard thing works here, but I think what we're looking at is like a really big project here. It's like, how do we roll that out, like, internationally and get everybody on board with this? So that's what I'm working on at the moment. I'm actually in talks right now, and we're working with the Americans to do this. And there's a big program actually. You have a mixed delegation between the US and the UK. There's actually government officers based in the US who are British, who are there simply to create that connection through different things, like if it's creating content and having people over there creating content in America from Britain, or helping campaigns migrate over there, like the sunflower lanyard and stuff like that. And it's amazing, and I'm glad that this took off. I actually seen it in its infancy when it was starting out, and they were quite like, oh my god, I don't think it's going to work. Is anybody think sunflower the right thing to use? But it doesn't matter. The principle, the idea was there, and I think it worked really well. And I think it's going to evolve a bit more, actually, the sunflower lanyard. But yeah, it's great. So things like that, fantastic. Access in shops, and changing it from just Autism Hour. I mean, what is that about? It really annoys me. National Autistic Society doing some great work, but it annoys me. Why just an hour? Why aren't we penalising these companies for not just making it autism friendly? Like, what on earth is going on? Like, oh, we have an Autism Hour this Saturday. It's like, what, just this Saturday? Anyway.
Does he honestly think that playing music and buying lights in the shop sells more?
No, of course not.
I don't think it does.
The idea is,
I walk out of the shop
and me as well. I can't do it. I actually I did a video about Christmas and how I despise Christmas shopping because you get thousands of people squashed together, and that's just too overwhelming for me. I go online, I do all shopping online, and everyone then worries, oh, why are the shops all closing down? Why is everyone using Amazon? It's like, because they're not friendly to people. They're just designed for a tiny demographic of people. It's ridiculous. But the reason the shops do that is because they are psychologically conditioning you when you walk into the store. They are confusing the mind and the senses. So for a neurotypical brain, they get pleasured by these things, and it kind of winds and dines them as they way in. They go, oh, okay, I'm in the store, the music playing, the people in the background become this kind of like rhythmic pattern of hypnosis, and then you guide to the shop, and then they sell you everything you want, and then that's how they make their money. It's psychology, shopping psychology 101. But for yeah, sorry.
The smell of lead.
Yeah, that whole thing. Like, for instance, like Thornton's have like a chocolate spray air freshener. That's actually not the smell of the chocolate you smell. It's an air freshener they made designed specifically for that. And Subway do the same thing. They have this like pizza smell that they put out because you can never get the sandwich that smells like the Subway smells. It's bizarre, isn't it? It tastes like Subway smells. And it's psychology. But the funny thing is, the neurodivergent brains go in there and they're like, whoa, this is like crazy. Like, that music is so loud. That light is so bright. There's too many people. I'm off. And so that is like the difference between the psychology that they try to attack people with. And then I suppose the difference is when you open them up to that kind of idea of thinking they're going to try and kind of try to manipulate us to buy stuff. I don't think it's going to work. Anyway, that is enough about psychology. So in a whole, that's the work I'm doing. That's what I did. That's what I try and talk about being awesomely autistic. That's why I try and encourage people. The way I try to boost people to doing something a bit different, thinking outside of the box, and just being thankful for having a glass. And I love that. So I am open to questions if anyone wants to ask me any questions on anything. And I'm going to stop talking specifically about that now. So thanks. Okay, anybody got any questions about anything?
Sort of.
Sure.
I have a whole thing. I'm actually trying to break into YouTube as well.
Oh, right. Cool.
I am struggling though.
Okay, it is a difficult minefield, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like I've tried all sorts of different jobs and things, and originally I wanted to work with animals because I love animals.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I found jobs with animals too physically demanding.
Yeah, it can be, yeah.
But it's like I've tried so many things and none of them have felt right. Like they've all made me feel really uncomfortable.
So
until I got to like creating stuff.
Yeah, also creativity, of course. It's the language of us, isn't it? Do you know? It's funny. I actually got into YouTube by accident. I used to work for a company. I was talking to my friend Paul on the way up here, the guy who's filming right now. I have a wave at Paul. We were talking about this on the way up, that I actually used to work for a multimedia development company making smart card operation systems. And then I used to work for a company fixing American computer systems. So basically like Coke machines, like touchscreen Coke machines in America, these break. So I'd log in at night and fix them. It's cool. But the problem with it is that when I was working at night, it was fine. But then I would never sleep because I have a hard enough time sleeping at night anyway. When I was working at night, I could never kind of wake up, go to sleep, and then have a normal day's sleep. None of that worked. So I ended up leaving that job. Then I had a crazy meltdown in the job when I was creating like systems for the smart card service. And then they put me down to like 2 days a week. I mean, who can survive on 2 days a week work, right? But my doctors and everybody was like, Dan, this is really damaging for your health and your condition. You're gonna be in hospital long term if you don't, if you work any longer than 2 days. So I was like, goodness, what do I do? So I started my degree in chemistry because I thought, let's do something in the meantime. And I kind of did the chemistry degree because I was in between jobs and I was kind of bored, so I loved chemistry, so I'd do that. And then with YouTube, I started uploading videos to YouTube, and they just took steam. And then by the time I came out of university, it kind of made enough where I could do it as a kind of part-time job. So when I was, it made enough money to go part-time, and then I got really into it, which is kind of like what you're talking about. Is when you go into YouTube to make it a job, it can become very difficult. And I was saying the same thing to Paul on the way up here, is that the YouTube algorithm, which is how it distributes your videos, changes 13 times a year. That's a big task for anyone to figure out how on earth this thing works. Nobody tells you how it works, just to figure it out. I love it. I love how the algorithm works because it's just a challenge, a problem. It's a problem that we need to solve. I love it. And I have to love algorithms. And so it's doable. And the only thing I would say, and this is my advice, if you want to start a YouTube channel, starting with something you're absolutely passionate about. If you can add value to the world through YouTube, you'll succeed, because people are always after value. If you can offer something of value, it's great. Nobody wants to see, Greg and Jim going down to like Greg's to get a pasty. Nobody wants to watch that video. But if you were doing a video about why Greg's decided they were going to make a vegan version of their pasty, somebody would want to watch that because it adds value to their life. So it depends. Maybe you could do a video on animals, and that'd be.